What's happening, everybody? Let's talk about negligent discharges, accidental discharges, unintended discharges, whatever term you want to use for it. Let's talk about it. It's the subject of many conversations lately, especially the last 6 months to a year. People talk about Glocks and SIGs and M&Ps and Walthers. What else is there out there? Springfield's, Beretta has a striker-fired gun. Then there's all kinds of what would we call them? The aftermarket, like the P80s and all the variations of clones. It's an M&P, but it's made by somebody else. It's a grip module made by Wilson. It's all these different things. They're all the same thing, right? It's a striker-fired pistol. And when we talk about the pistol going off without your finger on the trigger, people want to figure out how it happened for good reason. Now, I was involved in a couple investigations into pistols that went off by themselves. They just went off. And as part of an agency, as a law enforcement guy, I was involved in looking into that. And I'm going to talk about a couple of those because nobody was seriously hurt, and I'm not going to mention any names. The first thing that one of the people in the comments on a video I posted recently was that cops don't wear untucked shirts or something to that nature, that doesn't get into, so there's no way something could get into the trigger guard or actuate the trigger outside of their own finger. Au contraire. I worked in an area of the country that has all the seasons and inclement weather pretty much all the time. And so you're wearing winter gear, you're wearing rain gear, all kinds of different stuff. And I don't have any of my former duty stuff, but I do have something that was present on those things, which is one of these little doohickeys. You've probably seen them. They go on your bottom of your winter coat, and you can cinch this up so it seals the waist area of the coat to your body, airtights it, right? Well, these cool little jobs are right where what is on a police officer's body, the holster. They can sometimes migrate into, this is an unloaded pistol. Go ahead and show you that real quick. Mags out, slides back, nothing in there, nothing in there. As always, no ammo anywhere in here. In a light bearing, or a holster made for a weapon mounted light, see that gap right there? I intentionally left the light off. It doesn't change how the pistol sits in the holster. You can hear I'm shaking and it's not loose because the light isn't there. But it also makes it so you can see that gap. See that gap right there? So that gap is around the trigger area because that's where the light is on the weapon mounted light, right? This thing can migrate in there. See that? And now that's in there. Now, you move it around a little bit in there and it can get caught and it can actuate the trigger. We had one of those in a car. Officer got in the car, buckled in, moved his coat around a little bit. Somehow or another, I'm not saying that I know how, but Murphy's Law, that little thing migrated into this space right here, and the holster he had was the SLS and the ALS. This is the ALS, the tab, and it had the hood that goes over the top, but it got down in there, and when he went to adjust to move, his pistol went off. And it was pretty easy to figure out what had happened. It was pretty incredible what had happened. What are the chances of that, man? Then, 2 years later, similar again, officer is putting his coat on to leave. He took what we call 7, which is lunch, took his 10-7, went to his home, went to his residence, which is in the city he worked in, took off his coat, all that, ate something real quick, put his coat back on to leave, and as he's putting his coat on, again, that little thing migrated in there and got on that trigger and was able to get past the trigger safety, the little dongle there, was able to get past that trigger safety, and when he moved around a little bit to get into the car, walking out, get into the car, and he moved, it went off. Fortunately, nobody was hurt except for his pride and I believe the car. But again, stuff migrated in. A way to avoid that, obviously, is to, one, cut those things off, which is what I did. After that first investigation, when that came to light, I cut those things off. Took my winter gear. I'm like, look, I'll deal with some air whipping up, getting underneath of that coat and freezing me. I would rather deal with freezing and all that good stuff than deal with my pistol going off when I don't want it to and maybe hurting somebody, myself included. I removed all that stuff from my gear. You can't really make that an SOP. You can't really tell people to cut their coats and all that stuff, but I highly recommended it after those incidents. There was a couple of those. Another incident that happened, this involved an M&P. Again, light bearing holster. Again, you can see, if I can get this here, see that space in there? It's a similar holster maker. All of our holsters came from the same people, or the same company. Basically, it's how do I say this? It's not a design flaw, but in order for the light to be able to get in there, the light's going to be out here, right? So the light's not directly in line with the trigger guard. In order to make it slim enough that nothing can get into that space in there, right, around that trigger guard area, you would have to make the light the exact same size as that trigger guard in order to avoid that. And maybe somebody's doing that, I don't know, but I can tell you this. There's another incident where guys were dealing with a female, so small hands, wrestling around with her, wrestling with this girl. They're trying to hang on to her. She gets a hand loose, and I can, with my index finger, I can get my index finger in there. See that? If I actuate this and let this come out a little bit, you can see where my finger is on the trigger? I can actually press the trigger from there. She was able to get her finger in there while it's in the holster, so I'll do it with my pinky. She was able to get her finger in there and press the trigger and get a round to go. And of course, everybody freaks out because shots are fired. They don't know if she has a gun, if someone else has come up with a gun. They don't know what's happening. They just know a shot just was fired. Nobody was hurt. We were able to figure it out. Dash cam footage was of great assistance in figuring out what happened and where the breakdown in the system occurred. Those are a couple examples of how things migrated in to the trigger guard in a duty holster of a uniformed police officer. Now, there were a couple other incidents that occurred. Guys holstering. These guys come in on a call and they're holding the guy at gunpoint. They got the guy at gunpoint. They're holding him at gunpoint. It's a domestic involving a knife. They're telling the guy to drop the knife. They're in the front living area of the apartment. The guy drops the knife, turns and starts running towards the bedroom area of the apartment. The two officers, one holsters right away and starts booking it. The other guy still has this gun in his hand. He's also running. I know. There was a discussion about that was had. Booking it back there, gets back to the back room. The guy jumps on the bed and is trying to crawl to the other side of the bed. You gotta remember, it's an apartment, it's tiny, the bed takes up most of the room in that bedroom. Trying to get to the back, and first guy who had already holstered, he's on this guy, trying to grab him, trying to figure out they don't know what he's doing. He's going for something, but they don't know what. Second guy comes in, realizes he's waving the gun around while also trying to fight, goes to holster. As he holsters, guess what drifts into the trigger? As he holsters, he gets here, and that's what happens. If you can't see what happened there, see if I can duplicate it for you. As he's doing that, you probably you could tell me what happened, right? Gets there, and the pressure actuates the trigger, drives his trigger finger down. That was on an M&P, I believe, if I recall correctly. Do these things happen? Yes. I was on a range teaching a class, and I've talked about this before. Guy was excited, just got done a good run, full of adrenaline, went to holster. He had been holstering in a way I warned him about it numerous times. That's on me, I own that. He had corrected it. I kind of had stopped being like a hawk on him about it, and he goes to holster and he does this thing with his hands again, where he lets his hands go and he kind of does this. And when he goes to holster, middle finger gets hit by the holster, pushed into the trigger guard, touches off the round. I watched it happen. Right as I went to go stop, the round went off. It hit the ground in between us, almost got me on the right foot. We had a conversation. Corrective action was taken, shall we say. And, but we grow, man. You learn and you move on. But all that to say that every time I have seen a pistol fire unintentionally, there was something in there that made the trigger move. There are advantages over striker fire guns that hammer guns have, and this is one area. Now obviously with this model of the Safariland ALS, it doesn't matter if you have a hammer gun or a striker gun. If something gets in the trigger and pulls it back far enough, maybe the advantage of, say, a Beretta, a SIG, some sort of 1911 would be that there's safeties or decocker that can act as a safety, or the long travel of the Beretta, that first DA pull on a Beretta or on a SIG would give you enough time to realize something was happening and stop it. But the other thing too is with the hood, I don't have one of those holsters, but you guys probably know what I'm talking about. The SLS hood that goes across here, that sits on the top of the hammer. And so then the hammer can't move backwards. It would stop anything from happening anyway. Now, does that explain the allegations that guns are going off without fingers and triggers? Guns are going off when a backpack bumps it, or an arm bumps it, or a foot bumps it, or something like that without anything in the trigger? I'm not explaining that, man. That's above my pay grade. I can only tell you about the things that I've seen, the things I've investigated, and the reports I've read from others who have investigated similar incidents every single time with the Glock or the M&P. That was an XD Springfield. Also, it has a trigger safety similar to a Glock, but again, it was something like one of these things, or some keys. What else was it? I want to get this right. The coat had become, somehow the coat got between the holster, between the body of the officer and the holster, and when he was trying to get the gun into the holster while dealing with another person, struggling with this other person, trying to get his gun away, and got caught in his coat. I don't know if it was rain gear, but I do know it was a longer coat, so kind of the tail end of the coat was below his holster, so think like a winter coat, like somebody would wear in Indiana, northern Indiana, Chicago area, Michigan. There was a longer coat below the holster, and it just got bunched up in there, and somehow or another a little bit of that coat got into the trigger guard, and the more he shoved it, the worse it got, and the gun went off. And on the footage, you can see the gun is kind of stuck on the coat. That's because it was wedged. That was an interesting one. But again, always something in the trigger, never just going off on its own. Always an explanation if you dug deep enough and looked into it and didn't just go with, well, the gun went off. One other one that was good. That was a good one. A Smith & Wesson 4586 hammer gun, double action, training day. Their officers are being told to download all live ammo. They're at the safe area, take the magazine out, rack the slide, check all that stuff. Somehow or another, this guy, a round goes off. Now, he tried to say that the pistol just went off on its own. It just went off. Something's wrong with this gun. It just went off. However, the person that was next to him, because it's a training day, so it's all mixed, the person that was next to him was a pretty squared away supervisor who immediately grabbed his hand. They're kind of like here. The guy's to the left of him. This supervisor grabs his hand and grabs the gun. Basically freezes everything in place. And he's like, dude, gives him the knife hand. And then won't let go of the gun. Because what the heck just happened? And he calls me over. And I immediately come over. I'm like, what just happened, man? Get over there. And as he lets go, I see the officer's fingers in the trigger. He touched off a round. Don't know why. We instructions were very clear. 100 other people prior had done this without incident. I don't know. Some people shouldn't be police officers, right? Some people, if you want a government pension and a government job and a secure paycheck, go work for the post office, bro. Nobody gets hurt there. But yeah, so anyway, every single time there's been a finger in the trigger, there's been an object in the trigger, there's been something that has made that happen, and it's never just been the gun going off by itself. That's my experience, man. Hopefully that answers some of the things that came up. Yes, there have been NDs and ADs or UDs, whatever you want to call it. There have been those things. There have been instances where pistols have fired when they're not supposed to, but every single time something has worked that trigger and it has caused a negative outcome. All right, guys, I'd like to hear your experiences. If you've ever seen a unintended discharge, if you've ever been around for an accidental discharge or negligent discharge, what happened and how'd you guys handle it? How did it go? And if you were with an agency or in a professional organization where the job is to be armed, how'd you guys handle it? For us, those are suspension days, minimum. Guys are going to lose some time and without pay, and they're going to get a chance to think about it. And then they're going to have to go through a training cycle where they have to come in and go down on the range, and we treat them like a day one recruit, and we take them through these are the 4 rules of gun safety, and we treat them like this is their first day. It's embarrassing, maybe. To me, I would treat something like that as like I have a chance to redeem myself. I screwed up. I didn't get fired though. Nobody got hurt. Let's just come back from this in a way that convinces everybody I'm capable and I should be here. I should not be doing something else. All right, guys. You guys have a good one.